Unfortunately, 4% of our conference can join all the Democrats and dictate who can be the Republican speaker in this House. I don't think that rule is good for the institution, but apparently I'm the only one. I believe I can continue to fight, maybe in a different manner. I will not run for speaker again. I'll have the conference pick somebody else.
The yeas are 216. The nays are 210. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The office of Speaker of the House of the United States House of Representatives is hereby declared vacant.
I've been extremely consistent from when this began to when this all started, that you need to have more than 2 steps. And those rest of those steps need to be very good. They need to be like even kind of good. Because my best faith reading for someone who hosts a show called Bad Faith, who often practices in it when she's not finding new ways to defend Russell Brand and extend grace to him.
Is there any kind of sense that there might be more of a case to extend grace in this situation as opposed to some others? I think so.
Chair declares the House in recess, subject to the call of the chair.
That last clip there was Patrick McHenry wanting to end things with a bang, quite literally. He really does not want that job of acting speaker, considering that he is the next in line for Kevin McCarthy, who has just been kicked out as speaker. So the House of Representatives is in chaos, but to be clear, it is the Republican Party that is in chaos, because the narratives are going to be that it's the whole Congress in chaos, when the Democrats were aligned. They're aligned in that they don't like McCarthy, and they're not going to enable or be caught voting for a Republican to be the Speaker of the House without at least some major concessions to the fundamental ways Republicans have been running government for the past 10 years. And Kevin McCarthy is a really good example of how government's been run over the past 10 years. So unfortunately, people aren't pointing out that Kevin McCarthy's entire history in the US Congress makes this moment where he's being ousted total destiny. To go really quickly, he lied in his exit speech saying that he tried to be an intern for a congressperson but got denied, and so he ran for the same seat and won. He's actually someone who staffed in his predecessor's seat, and then shortly after leaving that staff decided to run for office for that seat, which is totally fine, although his predecessor has since denounced Kevin McCarthy for buying into Trump's election lie. When he was in Congress, he worked his way up through leadership. He won in 2006, so this is right before the Obama wave, and even then, the Obama counter wave, where Mitch McConnell said that he wanted to make Obama a one-term president. The Tea Party caucus in the 2010s are like the Freedom Caucus in the 2020s. They're the rogue ones. They feel like they want to buck the establishment, go for smaller government, and Kevin McCarthy was considered to be one of these guys, along with Paul Ryan and Eric Cantor. More on them in just a moment. Kevin McCarthy made his bones in Congress by leading the Benghazi hearings, which were about Hillary Clinton and her role as Secretary of State of the whole Libya affair. And while leading those investigations, Kevin McCarthy spoke to Fox News' Sean Hannity at the time. And he said that, he admitted actually, that the entire hearings were meant to be something that could hurt Hillary Clinton's chances of running and winning in 2016 for the presidential race. He later had to walk those comments back because it was way too on the nose. He was criticized at the time for saying the quiet part out loud. Speaking of criticisms of Kevin McCarthy, he is a representative from Bakersfield in California. It's outside of Los Angeles, very far outside of Los Angeles, in the Central Valley, so it's a lot of farms. And he hasn't held a town hall with his constituents since 2010. He's only done telephoning things, so he was right at home doing Zoom meetings during COVID, I imagine. But he's been criticized by his own constituents for being inaccessible, which is really funny considering once Trump got elected in 2016, he became Trump's number one guy in Congress, or at least in the House, and tried to act like one of those drain the swamp characters, when in reality, he is the exact type of swamp that people really hate. Through this entire period of the 2010s and the 2020s, you have a way that the House of Representatives works, where instead of passing individual bills, the last major bill that was passed, other than tax cuts and some COVID emergency relief things was the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare. And that's because everything we've been doing since then happens through continuing resolutions in relation to the debt ceiling. So when the debt ceiling comes up and the US gets towards this weird point where by not updating a spreadsheet, essentially, they could default on money they have already spent for bills they have already paid, based on how the US monetary system works, based on how it works when you create your own currency like this. So people pack things into the bill in this last minute because it's the only major bill that Congress is able to pass. But fast forwarding to 2023, he won with so little support. He was only elected speaker after 15 votes. And with him being ousted as speaker, he is the shortest lived speaker, I guess. It's a little bit more, but he's still alive. But politically, who's to say? But it's the shortest tenure for a Speaker of the House since 1876. Things were pretty divided in the country during 1876. It was, just after the Civil War, Reconstruction was starting to become a failed project, etc., etc. These young guns, by the way, Paul Ryan, Eric Cantor, and Kevin McCarthy. Paul Ryan tried to be the Speaker of the House, and that failed pretty badly. Eric Cantor tried, and that failed very badly. All these folks on this cover who have been hyped up as the young guns have since either left Congress or have been voted out of Congress or have been booted from the speakership. So I really think that this sort of reality TV-esque ending is really apt here for these guys. Just a little fadeaway here. I believe Parker Malloy made this on Twitter, so credit to them. But just look at this beauty. Just look at this. So you're probably wondering why I titled this video about force the vote. And it makes sense because what Matt Gaetz did with his small sort of cohort, as Kevin McCarthy said in his exit speech, there were just 8 or so Republicans, or a small group of Republicans, who, because the margins were so thin, were able to oust Kevin McCarthy as speaker because Kevin McCarthy had crossed certain red lines, one of which being passing a debt ceiling and raising it with Democratic support. And so Matt Gaetz is feeling himself. He's got a lot of media attention. He feels like he's really good right now. But to his own admission, he has no idea of what he wants to do right now. The New Republic's Tori Otten reports and says, I'm quoting from here, if Gaetz does manage to force a new vote for speaker, his not having a candidate in mind, my talking now, because again here, he hasn't put forward a suggestion and he hasn't talked about a plan for how to move forward. Because again, the debt ceiling has to still happen. If you want to talk about abolishing the debt ceiling altogether, I think that's a conversation people on the left might want to have. People further to the left of the Democratic Party, maybe even the squad. So you get some coalitional support there, and maybe some in the Senate as well, because this is a dumb process we do where we constantly put regular workers, be it in the military, which there are problems with, but also just who work in the government and just work at jobs at different agencies, have to fear for their paychecks because of political bickering in Washington, D.C. Back to Tori Otten's article, though. Kevin McCarthy's not having a candidate in mind could drag things out even longer, send the House spiraling further into chaos than it already is. The natural successor to McCarthy would be House Majority Leader Steve Scalise, who is getting out of treatment for a medical condition. Majority Whip Tom Emmer and Conference Chair Elise Stefanik would also be obvious choices, but they have taken themselves out of the running. So there is no probable heir apparent to be speaker at time of recording. You have to have a Speaker of the House, even though you have the acting speaker, Patrick McHenry, who did that mean gavel punch. Let's play that back one more again. It's just so funny.
Chair declares the House in recess, subject to the call of the chair.
God.
Chair declares the House
He did that like with his chest. Like watch
in recess, subject to the call of the chair.
It's so good. Right now, Matt Gaetz did the whole I never thought I'd get this far from SpongeBob that Plankton did. And there is no plan and there is no strategy. So that's why I added the Force the Vote title to this. And now this is why I have a little bit of stuff to say, because Briahna Joy Gray is, of course, popping off on this and doing victory laps on this. I am recording a little bit before her most recent Rising episode or anything else, but I will say that she finds that this is a vindicating moment for her. One of several other vindicating moments where every time that Matt Gaetz and Kevin McCarthy and those two factions, the Freedom Caucus and the rest of the Republicans, which I'll say one thing here that the Democrats, like as a coalition in the House, did very smartly. In their statement, they said that there are no moderate Republicans to really work with on this, and that let the chips fall where they may. They're not going to agree on a Republican Speaker of the House in this moment and not take any sort of concessions in that. So that's a strategy that I think Briahna Joy Gray arguing for getting concessions, that's a totally fine thing here. But where Force the Vote really starts to lose did lose a lot of things with me. This is something I'm on record for talking about on the Insurgents podcast in December of 2020. So at the beginning of all of this Force the Vote stuff, I've been extremely consistent on this, that you need to have more than 2 steps. And those rest of those steps need to be very good. They need to be like even kind of good. Because my best faith reading for someone who hosts a show called Bad Faith, who often practices in it when she's not finding new ways to defend Russell Brand and extend grace to him.
Is there any kind of sense that there might be more of a case to extend grace in this situation as opposed to some others? I think so.
My best understanding of Force the Vote was that step 1, you put Pelosi's speakership in jeopardy. Step 2, as a unified and unbreakable bloc, you demand a floor vote on Medicare for All, so you have everyone on record for how they feel about Medicare for All, even though pretty much everyone in the House is already on record in some way, either on air or in things they've already said. Step 3, question marks. Step 4, profit. It's reliant a lot on the idea that whole debacle would have kickstarted some, sleeper cell within the United States countrywide where Americans who otherwise weren't politically active would start to become rampant Medicare for All supporters. I believe that we need to do these things on Medicare for All, but also put these in a newer, post Bernie Sanders context where we're also talking about going beyond Medicare for All and going into policies that have created systemic injustice racially, through climate. You need big style reforms. One of those things you need to do to get these style reforms is stop passing things through continuing resolution. So you have these Christmas tree bills that go out whenever the government needs to do this one thing, whenever the Congress needs to do this one thing. And you need to start moving towards getting real progress on these things. This is what I would recommend Democrats and the squad advocate for right now, like the so-called squad in this. Because the whole plan that Briahna Joy Gray would have been talking about back in 2020, 2021, and unfortunately, because she's made this her entire point of existence now because she uses the Force the Vote and these other arguments she starts all the time, basically to pay off her student loans from law school. But all of that aside, I disagree with it because there's just no logic to the strategy. If Briahna Joy Gray were your boss in a workplace, it'd be giving you bad guidance and leadership and then blaming you for less than good results. Briahna Joy Gray is hawking bad strategy because she's made Force the Vote her rallying cry for her entire media brand now. It's lucrative for her, I'm sure, so good, but she's using her prior credentials to act as an authority on these ideas, and people sort of lead with that. And it's just not a strong idea. It's just not good. This is very simple. And last thing, if your response to that is, well, you're rooting for the Democratic Party, well, you're selling out, well, you work for the Democratic Party, I'm this close to calling you like a name or an insult to your face or your intelligence, but like I'll be nice one last time. First of all, the Democratic Party doesn't pay me. If you paid attention to anything I've done in politics for longer than many people saying that have been paying attention to politics, then they will understand that I've been extremely critical of the Democratic Party as I've been extremely critical of the Republican Party, because I'm extremely critical of the duopoly in this country. I hate having to work in the Democratic Party for legislative gains because Republicans are the only other viable option in a two-party fascistic duopoly, as Cornel West brilliantly points out. But I don't like siding with Democrats just because Republicans are worse. They're just objectively worse. And they're even more vicious in politically attacking those I agree with and people I agree with, including folks like Briahna Joy Gray. And that's the politics they have inside and out. And since those are the cards I've been dealt, I have a strategy for dealing inside Washington and a strategy for working outside Washington and like beyond Washington. So don't mistake strategy disagreements for policy disagreements. Unless, of course, you want to grift. Thank you for checking this out. I should be making more videos like these because YouTube puts all of my live streams in a different tab, so it looks like I haven't uploaded a video in a while, but in reality, I've just been doing Power Report Live, where we live stream on YouTube and Twitch. 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, most Thursdays. I get a panel of folks together. Sometimes I go solo. Oftentimes I'm with the Power Report crew, Bam, C's, Sean. There's other great guests from the left that are on. I get interviews from time to time. Sometimes I'm on Leftist Mafia and I co-stream with that. Sometimes we're live streaming debates. It's a really fun time. So check it out at youtube.com/danfromtheinternet or twitch.tv/danfromtheweb. And we're slowly monetizing, so if you send a super chat or you become a subscriber, that is also appreciated as well. Cheers!